Well, good morning again, and I'm excited for us to gather together to actually look one more time at one more Trailblazer together, and we are ending our summer series with Esther this morning, and hopefully, and just from the feedback, I feel like we can kind of say that you've enjoyed the Trailblazer series, and at least I hope you have. If you hadn't been able to catch all of them, you can go back to our YouTube and to the videos and watch any of the sermons or listen to the podcast to catch up. And who knows, maybe we'll come back to this Trailblazer series in the future and look at even more Trailblazers. We were barely scratching the surface and barely getting halfway through the Old Testament with the ones we did through 12 weeks. But overall, it's been a joy for myself, and I can speak for Evan and for Dawson and for Danny and those that preach this series. It's been a joy to look at these Trailblazers together, to see, as the subtitle says, ordinary people showing extraordinary faith. But as we've joked, though seriously, about in every story we're seeing much more of God's faithfulness than these ordinary people. And so as we wrap up today with Esther, I think we're going to see that again, another ordinary person showing extraordinary faith, but God being faithful through it all. But I do have to imagine that throughout this series, it may have caused some of you to be a little bit frustrated every week when we get to the application point about being faithful or showing faith in these different ways. And I imagine it could be frustrating because maybe you go from a Sunday to the rest of your week and you're like, well, listen, Danny, Evan, Tanner, Dawson, whoever's preaching, it's easy for that person to show faith because they're living with God's people. Or, as most of the Trailblazers we saw, hey, it's easy for that person to show faith. They're the leader of God's people. They're expected to do that. They're constantly, it's like as if they were constantly pastors or constantly in church when we're looking at these Old Testament people. They're with God's people. Surely it's easy for them to show faith, but what about me going Monday through Saturday, or even sometimes Sunday to Sunday, to a job where it's not like that? What about me when I go back to my job or go back to my school or go back to a circumstance that feels like it's actually far from God? It feels like God is absent. How do I show faith? Can I even show faith? And I want to say, first off, I hear you. I'm with you. We talk about this a lot with our youth, how easy it can be to live out our faith on a Sunday or a Wednesday or at camp or Super Summer, wherever we may be. Now, who knows? But the difficulty is going back to school, going off to college, and actually living it out when it feels like it's a little bit more of a distance from a place where God is. But I want us to see today's truth right off the bat. You'll see it on the screen, and it's going to be maybe a difficult truth to hear because it's just one more preacher giving you a hard truth. But here's today's truth, is that your faith is to be lived out in every place. I know you're like, well, duh, that's the church answer. That's the church statement, right? Your faith is to be lived out in every place. But when I say every place, I mean every place. Even the dark places, even the difficult places, even the difficult circumstances you find yourself in, your faith is to be a living faith in every place. If I can add a parenthesis in here without asking Ron to add it for me, your faith is to be lived out with God's help in every place. So you're not going to just do it on your own. You're not going to do it in your own strength. You need the help of God for you to live out your faith in every aspect of your life. And I'm confident and I'm hopeful as we look at Esther's story today that we're going to see how our faith can be a living faith no matter where it's at. But when I look at Esther, we're going to be in Esther 4. So if you want to go ahead and turn to Esther 4 to actually get ready for what we're going to read. But when I look at Esther's story, I can't help but think about not fitting in. Like I can't help but think about times in my own life where I felt like I didn't fit in. Maybe for you, you're thinking, or for me, thinking like silly and simple things, like showing up to a friend gathering and you're the only person that doesn't know how to play the game that everyone at the gathering knows how to play. And you feel like you just don't fit in. Maybe you joined a team at one point and everyone else has been playing as teammates for a long time and you're the new person on the team and you feel like, man, I just don't fit in. Like everyone's got a position, everyone's got inside jokes, I just don't fit in. Or maybe you show up to a job and in all reality, maybe you're the only Christian there and you feel like, I just don't fit in. Think about times in your life where, or maybe even now, where you don't fit in. And in Esther's story, the book of Esther itself actually kind of fits that description. See, Esther's story feels like it doesn't fit in with the rest of the Bible because it's the one book of the Bible that has no mention of God at all, by name or by title. And even in one place we're going to look at today that kind of alludes to a mention of God, even that is very ambiguous. So it feels like, why is this story even in here? Not only that, this book is in the Old Testament where most of the other books would start with, the word of the Lord came to so-and-so, or they would start with showing us this mighty person of God who's about to be raised up to lead the people of Israel or the people in exile. But instead, Esther, the whole first 2 chapters about this king, Ahasuerus, or his Greek name is King Xerxes. You would probably hear me say that because it's easier to say, but this king who's throwing these banquets and these feasts that are much more about debauchery and drunkenness than anything that we could really look for in God's people. Not only that, the protagonist, Esther herself, again, no mention of God, but she finds herself in her position in kind of this weird way. To say that she won a beauty pageant would be putting it nicely. It was much more to this contest that gets her to be queen than just nice looks and singing and doing some sort of talent. There was a lot more there that was more degrading. See, it's a weird book in a lot of ways, and it feels like it doesn't fit in. But in the midst of this book, where it feels like God is absent, where it feels like the people of God are more under attack than any other time, we actually see faithfulness, God's faithfulness, and how we are to live as faithful people. Before we get to Esther 4, let me catch you up to speed for the first 3 chapters. You heard me talk about how the first chapter introduces us to King Xerxes, who is throwing these feasts and these banquets, and there's debauchery and drunkenness, and he wants to bring his queen, Queen Vashti, to kind of show her beauty off. Again, that's a very nice way of putting it. And she refuses, and so he banishes her. And then, it says in chapter 2, after his anger finally abated, or it kind of settled down, which, by the way, this is 3 years later. So he was 3 years angry over this. He wants to have another queen, so he throws this contest, and Esther is actually this young Israelite girl, I say young, she's this Israelite woman. She enters this contest and she wins. She is the new queen, and her first cousin Mordecai helps her through all of this. And in the meantime, Mordecai hears of this plot to have the king killed, and so he shares that news, and the king is spared. And there's this other man named Haman who is also elevated, and Mordecai doesn't honor Haman. He doesn't bow down to Haman, and Haman gets upset at Mordecai, Esther's first cousin. And Haman devises this plan because he hears Mordecai is Jewish. So instead of just wiping out Mordecai, like any other movie might say, Haman says, I'm going to wipe out all of Mordecai's people, the Jewish people. So by the time we get to chapter 4, a lot has happened, a lot of craziness has happened, and the news is getting to Esther that all of the Jewish people here in Susa in Persia, where they're in exile, they're about to be wiped out because of Haman's anger. And it seems like there is no deliverance available. And Mordecai comes to Esther, his first cousin, and he tells her all of this. And we pick up in chapter 4, verse 12 of Esther. And news is getting back to Mordecai of what Esther has said as they're kind of sending correspondence back. It says in verse 12, and the servants told Mordecai what Esther had said, and Mordecai told them to tell Esther, do not think to yourself that in the king's palace you will escape any more than all the other Jews. Saying, look, even though you're in the king's palace, you also are in danger. Verse 14, for if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from some other place, but you and your father's house will perish. And here's our key verse here. Who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Who knows whether you've not come to be queen here in Persia for such a time as this? See, friends, if our faith is to be a living faith in every place, you need to understand this first point, is that you are where you are for a purpose. You are where you are for a purpose. So don't fall into this trap of thinking, hey, I'm on my way to being in a place where I can live out my faith, or one day I'll be good enough at reading the Bible, or I'll be in a situation where I can live my faith. You are where you are for a purpose. And as difficult as it may be to hear, please know that God has you where you are in your life or your circumstances for a purpose. Maybe you don't know how you ended up in the job that you got and you feel like you don't even belong there. You're there for a purpose. Maybe you joined a team that just is so difficult to work with that you don't want to be there. Trust me, you're there for a purpose. Maybe your life circumstances have you more in waiting rooms or at doctor's offices than at your own home. You're there for a purpose. Or maybe the people you work with or go to school with or even live with are more hostile towards any thought of God than you could ever imagine. You're there for a purpose, as difficult as it may be to accept. See, Mordecai and Esther find themselves in very interesting situations. Esther living kind of in this high life of being a part of the palace, being a queen, and Mordecai kind of on the run in a little bit because of his disdain for Haman. Their circumstances have them there for a purpose. Mordecai wanted Esther to understand that she was made queen not by accident, but there's a reason behind it. See, understanding purpose makes so much of a difference. In fact, businesses will pay tons of money to team building professionals to come in and bring every worker into a conference room and help them understand the why behind their business, understand the purpose of the company, and for each individual worker to understand their purpose in that company. Thousands, millions of dollars are pumped into this business of helping people see their purpose because companies, businesses, teams know if you understand your why, if you understand your purpose, you will be efficient. And not only that, studies show you will have joy in your job if you know why you're doing what you're doing. Because understanding purpose matters. If we understand our purpose, understand that we are where we are for a purpose, it will make all the difference. And the difficulty comes when we're in a place where we don't want to be, when we're in an uncomfortable circumstance. It might be easy for Esther to say, well, yeah, I'm here for a purpose. I'm in this great situation, but maybe you're Mordecai. Maybe you're in a difficult circumstance right now. I think back to my life back in 2018, 2019. I'd already graduated college. As everyone knows, as recent college grads, recent high school grads have come to understand in the last few months, you get bombarded with questions. What's next? What's next? And so I knew I wanted to do ministry, and there were some opportunities there, but nothing just fell into place like I thought it would. And I ended up back at the high school that I grew up in teaching French, and guess how much French I knew? Bonjour. I don't even know if I said that right. I didn't know French, and that's not a knock at our Mississippi public school system. It's just the fact that French teachers, if they leave in August, Mississippi's not looking for French teachers in the middle of August. No French teachers looking to move in the middle of August either. And so I filled in a gap, and I was there teaching at the high school I grew up in, actually teaching French in the class. I took Spanish 1 and 2 in, so that was a little awkward too. But I was there, and I did ask that question often, why am I here? Like, I want to be doing youth ministry, and on Wednesday nights I was helping fill in another gap at our church as we were in between youth ministers, and when we did get a youth minister, I was filling in for him some, and so I was filling in the gaps, but I was wondering, why am I still here? I have these opportunities to leave. The door was open for me to not be a French teacher. The principal made that clear, but I kept wondering, why am I still here? I love being with my family. It's great, but why is there not something else? And then the next summer in 2019, after a year of getting to know the students at the school and then ministering to them at our church and other places, still wondering why I'm here, we'll go off to seminary for a week of classes and come back and get the difficult news that my mom has been diagnosed with breast cancer. And all of a sudden, some things start to line up of, I'm still back home so that I can still serve my family. I'm still back home so I can care for the people that are close to me, because many of you know, as soon as you move off for the first time, it's very difficult for you to just walk back and be back home and serve and care. There was purpose for why I was where I was, as difficult as it was for me to understand. What is it for you? Do you understand that you are where you are for a purpose. Don't discredit the terrible situation you may be going through. Don't discredit the tough job that you're in, that you're ready to finish up with, whether it's retirement or whether it's just put in your 2 weeks notice right now. Don't throw out that God has you there for a purpose. Live out your faith in every area of your life. Mordecai is wanting Esther to see she's where she's at for a great purpose. Think, who better to reach the people in your life circumstances, in your jobs, than you? I was trying to look up the survey. It's about 3 years old now, and it's still out there, but we talk about it often in church offices that there used to be a survey done about every 2 years to believers and non-believers, asking folks, hey, if someone asks you to come to church, who would make you more likely to come to church? And I probably worded that really convoluted, but the survey came back and it would say that if a pastor asks a non-believer to come to church, about 10% of those people would come. But if a friend asked them to come to church, it'd be about 70 to 80% upwards. Who better to reach the people at your job, in your neighborhood, in your family, on your team, at your school than you? As nice as I would think our staff is, not as many people connect with us, but they connect with you. Who better to share and to show faith than you? They see you daily. They can tell your life of faith is authentic or not daily by how you live. And they can tell through your testimony if God really is a good God. I pray that all of us in this room understand the purpose God has for us, where we are, and what circumstances that we're in. This is how the world is reached, by people going out and living out their purpose. This is how salvation was coming to the Jews in Persia, of someone realizing their purpose, of Esther filling her purpose. But for us to truly reach people for Christ, for us to actually be, in a sense, a vessel to bring the good news of salvation and reach people even in dark places, we need to realize this second truth we see in Esther, and that is that you must be willing to lose. You must be willing to lose. Again, a difficult truth for us to hear, but let's read in verses 15 through 17 here in chapter 4. Mordecai has just told Esther, who knows whether you've not come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Verse 15, then Esther told the servants to reply to Mordecai, go gather all the Jews to be found in Susa and hold a fast on my behalf, and do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my young women will also fast as you do. Then I will go to the king, though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish, or if I die, I die. And Mordecai then went away and did everything as Esther had ordered him. What strong words from Esther. If I die, I die. But I'm going to go do it. I'm going to go do it. See, as she said right before that phrase there, in Persia, it was by law, you could put to death anyone that came to the king without a noble or worthy request. Esther knows this as queen. She knows how dire the circumstances are, and that if she doesn't come with the right wording, if she doesn't come with a noble request, that it is her life. At best, she ends up like Queen Vashti, just banished. At worst, she ends up dead on the gallows that Haman would make for Mordecai. But do you see, she's willing to lose. She's willing to lay down her life. I'll live out this purpose, but if I die, I die. And let's be honest, that may be difficult for us to say in our situation, but tomorrow, if everyone in this room went out into our jobs, to our schools, to our neighborhoods, or even to the stores, and if every one of us just shared the gospel, it is highly likely that none of us are going to lose our life. Let's be honest. But what the root is behind Esther's statement is she's refusing to be passive. Notice she says, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll lay down my life for this. I'll go and do it. She won't just stand by, and neither should we. Let's not be quiet about our faith. Let's live it out and talk about it. Not being passive, not being the one that goes into work tomorrow acting like everyone else, or being quiet about what God is doing in our life. There are many of you in this room that God has done immensely wonderful, outstanding things in your life. Would you just share that with the person across the desk from you? Would you just share that with the person that comes into your office tomorrow, that you go to school with this week? Would you just share with someone this week what God is doing in your life? Let's talk about it. This is what's behind Paul's words, these famous words in Romans 10, where he says, how will others call on him if they haven't believed? And how will they believe if they haven't heard? And how will they hear if no one proclaims the gospel? Paul is saying, don't be passive. Do you expect people to turn to God if they don't hear that he is there waiting for them to turn to him? Share your faith. Share the gospel. Don't be passive. But not only is Esther refusing to be passive, she's also, as one pastor put it, she's willing to lose the palace. She knows that if she does this, that there is the chance that she is either kicked out or killed, and she will lose the comfort of what it's like to be in this really nice situation. Are you at a job where you're really loving it and you know, man, if I were to share my faith, my boss doesn't like that and it may cause for some tension there? Are you willing to lose? She knows that if she does this, she may not only lose comfort, she will lose notoriety. Are you excited about, kind of prideful about how you're notable in the community? It's not a bad thing, but are you willing to lose it for the sake of the gospel? Are you willing to go and live out your faith and share the gospel, even if it means losing notoriety or losing influence? Another thing we talk about with students often, do you know, just side note, a study was done a few years ago of current teenagers, and it may not have been Saltillo teenagers, but teenagers in general, of what job would they like to have when they grow up. And for a while, the number one job on the list, the top one, was social media influencer. That's what they wanted. And it's a nice life. I mean, make a few posts and make a lot of money. Sounds great. There's something about influence, whether it's social media, whether it's being a coach, whether it's being a politician, whether it's being an office manager. There's something about having influence over people that we enjoy and we can leverage for the gospel. But are you willing to lose it for the sake of Christ? Are you willing to share the gospel even if it means losing followers, even if it means losing constituents, even if it means losing some of the respect of people around you? Are you willing to share the gospel? And losing the palace means also losing power. Are we willing to lose our status, in a sense, our power, for the sake of the gospel? Ultimately, Esther is willing to lay down her life. And Jesus calls us to do the same when we follow him, to take up our cross and follow him. Our students even looked at a passage this Wednesday in John 15 where Jesus says, look, there is no greater love than to lay down your life for a friend or for another. Again, do you love the people in your life circumstances, in your job? Do you love the people around you? Do you love your family? Do you love your friends? Do you love your classmates and teammates enough to lay down your life, being willing to lose whatever it is for the sake of the gospel? Paul writes again in Romans, like through tears, he's like, I would rather be cut off for the sake of my own family to actually come to the saving knowledge of Christ. Do you have that love for those around you? Are you willing to lose? I pray that we show great love for the people in our life by being willing to lose, being willing to live out and share our faith. But I know you may be wrestling with the thought right now of, is it even worth it? Like, say I do this, Tanner. Say I go tomorrow and actually share the gospel, actually share what God is doing in my life. Is it even worth it when I know there are people in my life that are not going to respond, that have no desire to know God? Well, let me encourage you with this final truth here, this third point, and that is that God is working even when you don't see it. God is working even when you don't see it. Turn a chapter over into Esther chapter 6. In Esther chapter 5, Esther does prepare a banquet and go and make a partial request, a first request of the king, and Haman is there. And after that, Haman goes and plans to have Mordecai killed on the gallows or impaled. And it's not looking good for Mordecai. But we read in chapter 6, on the night after this banquet and after Haman has put together this plan, on that night the king couldn't sleep. And so he gave orders to bring the book of memorable deeds, the Chronicles, and they were read. And it was found written how Mordecai had told about these guys who were wanting to assassinate the king and how Mordecai was the one to help save the king. We read what happens next is Mordecai is spared because the king is so thankful for him. You see how God is working? How many of you, when you can't go to sleep, open up a book of memorable deeds to find out what's been going on good in South Tilla? How many of you read the newspaper if you want to go to sleep? No, we put on some white noise. We play an episode of something on Netflix. The king has this light reading read to him, and it happens to be the very passage of where Mordecai helps spare the king's life by finding out about this plot to have him killed. God is at work even when Mordecai and Esther and Haman aren't even aware of it. And the same is true in our lives, in my life. Only God could bring this about. God is at work still. I've heard so many stories from y'all about how God has used something in your Bible reading to encourage someone that very day or that week. I've heard so many stories of how a sermon that you've heard from us or a Bible study you've been in here, how that week, that topic was the perfect topic because the very next day you were able to speak life into a situation that you're going through. God is still at work, even when we don't see it. In those cases, we do. There are people that you're going to go see tomorrow, this week, this month, that have been going through life circumstances that seem so hopeless, and they are desperate to hear that there is a God who cares. And who better to share that with them than you? There are people you'll see this week that for the first time or for the 50th time, they've asked themselves, what is the purpose of my life? And you can share the great news with them that our purpose is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever through faith in Him. Who better to share that with them than you? You've got the relationship with them. They see you. They trust you. God is working. Will you join Him in the work now where you are? Will you trust that He is working behind the scenes if you will just be faithful to live out your faith, faithful to share your faith, faithful to live it out in every place, every circumstance, no matter how dire or how dark? Will you join Him in the work? God is faithfully at work, and He is faithful to complete the work. But I have to wonder if you are here in the room and you have never trusted Him with your life. You haven't joined Him in the work because you haven't trusted Him for your life. I'd like to share with you about someone who's far better than Esther, far better of a king, far better of an example, but ultimately the one who brings salvation. See, Esther was willing to lose the palace for the sake of this deliverance, but Christ Himself stepped down from His throne, willing to lose the palace and laid down His life for us all. Christ, through His death, offered salvation to any who would trust in Him. And He calls all to look to Him for salvation, bringing ultimate salvation and deliverance to any who trust in Him. If you are ready to trust in Him, praise be to God. I would love to talk with you about it, but you can do that right in your seat by just surrendering your life, talking to God and giving it to Him. If you want to talk more about it, I'll be in the lobby here in a moment as we sing this last song, and come find me. Let's talk about it. but those of you that have trusted in Christ. The call is for us to live out our faith in every place. The easy thing to do is to say yes, and I'll do it while I'm on this campus. The difficult and the right thing to do is for us to step foot off this campus, to go out into our mission field and to live out our faith in every place. What area do you need to work on this week? What place are you saying, I can live out my faith in every spot of my life except this? This is too dark. Or I can live out my faith in every place except at this location, because what are they going to say when they realize I'm a Christian? This week, I imagine the Holy Spirit is putting that on your heart right now because he wants you to take that step of faith and live out your faith in that area. If you find that difficult, come talk to me. Grab a friend, because they're with you. They're living out their faith in their places also, and they can encourage you. That is why we gather together, is to realize we don't do this in some isolation. Christianity isn't a lone wolf project. We do this together. Grab a friend and ask them to pray for you as you live out your faith in every place this week.